This chapter says that it applies to the commissions specified in clause 2 and the independent offices specified in clause 3, except to the extent that this constitution provides otherwise. And then it goes ahead and lists all the independent commission that we must have, Mr. Speaker. But then further to chapter 249 of the Kenyan Constitution, we are provoked as a country to think about the objects and authority, and further even on the funding of these commissions, the independent offices that we have established as a country. And Mr. Speaker, there is a reason as why we have got these independent institutions. Because if you look at pre-2010, it was very difficult to predict graft, arrest graft, deter graft, and most importantly, eliminate graft in the country, Mr. Speaker. And if you look at the way all the commissions are structured, they're indeed structured to be independent to the extent that you can be able to stop graft in the country. But Mr. Speaker, this House, since inception in 2013, has done disservice to Article 249 of the Constitution. Because in Article 249 of the Constitution, it talks about 249.3 that Parliament shall allocate adequate funds to enable each commission and independent offices to perform its function under the budget of each commission, and independent offices shall be a separate vote. What this means, Mr. Speaker, is that while in the mind of our colleagues in the National Assembly, the Senate is not supposed to participate in the budget-making process in terms of active allocation and in terms of thinking about strong money bills that come out of these houses, Mr. Speaker, this particular article of the Constitution makes it mandatory that the Senate must indeed participate in this process. And I want to congratulate this committee because for the first time, Mr. Speaker, all the commissioners were invited as partners to be able to submit and to be able to give these eyes a bird's eye view position on the challenges they are facing in the budget-making process. Why am I highlighting this, Mr. Speaker? I'm highlighting this because the CS of Finance and Budget, who actually used to be my party chairman, disparaged this committee by not showing up to be able to listen to what this committee has as concerns in this budget-making process and the budget policy statement that is going to be a crux of what is going to inform the finance bill that will come in the next few coming months, Mr. Speaker. So it's so wrong for my former chairman of ODM and the current CS, John Mbadi, not to pay attention to what this House has to be able to contribute to this budget-making process. Mr. Speaker, it's so bad to the extent that if you look at the submission made by, for instance, the control of budget, one of the biggest problems that we have been struggling with as a House that is supposed to do oversight on counties is the issue of automation of processes of requisition of money going to our counties. And Mr. Speaker, this is how this process works, which is why, Mr. Speaker, if you look at this report, the committee has actually recommended significantly marginal increase on the money that is being given to these commissions. We have recommended about 10% on average to all the other commissions. And I think that the commissioners, I hope they are listening to this House, that they must be added money to effectively make sure that there is no graft in our county. And there have been added money to make sure that there is no graft within the nation of Kenya. Because the two watchdog commissions, Mr. Speaker, the Auditor General and the Control of Budget, have rightfully gained our respect from their submissions to make sure that they can be able to have up to 20% increment of the money that they envisioned, that the National Treasury envisioned at what they should be given from the budget policy statement. And I'll tell you why, Mr. Speaker. Because of time, I just use an example of lack of automation of requisitions that controller of budget has to deal with every single moment. Mr. Speaker, today if you go to our counties, and this exercise we went through with the Finance and Budget Committee when it came from Migori County, if you go and look at the kind of requisitions that are made, for instance, Mr. Speaker, you'll find that the control of budget is given requisition with invoices for commercial entities that have done supplies in counties or have done any kind of works in counties to the tunes of X amount of money. And then after giving the authorization that is required by the Constitution under 225, Article 225, after giving authorization to governors, they will then go, and in the IFMIS and IB, you will find that now those invoices are no longer there. If there were 100 invoices given to control of budget at the time of requisition, when you go at the time of payment, you'll find that one invoice now is being given, consolidating all the other stakeholders who had supplies to a county, consolidated into one invoice at the point of payment, to the extent that voiding has become part and parcel of our DNA for payment. Mr. Speaker, money is getting lost in ways that is embarrassing, that is demotivating, that is annoying in counties because of lack of automation in the requisition process by the COB. What is wrong if the COB appears before us and appears before this House through our committee and makes a requisition for further financing to make automation possible? So I want to congratulate this committee, Mr. Speaker, for having strongly listened to all the commissioners and having listened to them to the extent that we have taken an active role in making sure that those commissions and independent offices have been added money in this budget-making process. And I hope that the CS of Finance and National Treasury, Mr. Speaker, will listen to our proposals in this particular report and make sure that those commissions are given what is due to them. And those independent offices are empowered through this budget-making process to get adequate resources to perform their functions. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, is the report from the committee that I sit in, or rather the submission from the Committee of Transport, Road, and Housing that was given to this committee. And I think members can find it in that report. And one of the things that we depicted, Mr. Speaker, is the fight that has continued to go on within the realms of Parliament and within the corridors of court on the issue of RMLF. Mr. Speaker, this is a fight that in this report we have said that if this report passes in this House, when the finance bill comes to these houses, Mr. Speaker, and the issue of RMLF is not solved according to recommendations made by this committee, in this report, we will not pass subsequent budgetary bills in this House. And there's a reason to why, Mr. Speaker. RMLF, right now, you know that when it came about, the government was taking about 18 shillings from RMLF. From that 18 shillings, there's been a contention, time without number, on 10 billion that is supposed to go to counties for a very simple reason. They are county roads, they are national government roads. All these roads are being used by Kenyans, and you cannot take money from a levy that you're taking from Kenyans and choose to give one part of the government money to maintain those roads, and the other is denied. Mr. Speaker, the problem is so endemic that today I was dealing with a matter of Sangalu to it's called what? Where Senator Sifuna comes, the home of Senator Sifuna. Kandui. Mr. Speaker, there's a road there that is extremely important for the performance of businesses in Bungoma County. It's just about 6 kilometers worth of road. It's a national road, the Sangalu-Kandui Road. And that road, it was given to county government to do it, and it is taking a hit on county government because it needs about 1.2 billion to be able to do that road. That 1.2 billion, Mr. Speaker, is taking a hit on the county government of Bungoma. The county government of Bungoma has struggled and paid 512 million to start that road. And it has been tarmacked halfway, Mr. Speaker. But then, when you look at the portion that the national government was supposed to do, Mr. Speaker, that has made that road stall, and now forcing the county government of Bungoma to start thinking about budgeting in this year's budget to put another 212 million to be able to continue with the construction of that road, Mr. Speaker, it is unfair. Yet if you look at RMLF, Mr. Speaker, it is continued to be a battle, and a battle that we are not winning. But in this time round, Mr. Speaker, I think we should win it. Mr. Speaker, you remember last year on our RMLF, there was another levy that was increased on the same fund, Mr. Speaker. 7 shillings that was added on motorists. That 7 shillings, Mr. Speaker, was to further enable RMLF continue being strong in terms of financing maintenance of these roads, Mr. Speaker. That means that today, we are taking up to 25 shillings out of Kenyans to fund RMLF. But now, Mr. Speaker, in this BPS, the 7 shillings is actually not proposed to go and take care of roads that are supposed to be maintained. What is happening, Mr. Speaker, is that the 7 shillings has been put into a road bond, and that road bond has been floated into the capital markets, and I think that already Trade Development Bank and other banks are participating, so that the bond is going to help the national government deal with the backlog of pending bills on existing projects. Because currently, Mr. Speaker, the national roads have got a pending bill of about 175 billion. That 175 billion, Mr. Speaker, out of it, we have got project-affected persons who are still claiming about 39 billion out of this. And it means, Mr. Speaker, that if it is not solved, it becomes a crisis. Yet the solution for solving it, Mr. Speaker, again is RMLF, where the 7 billion has now been put into road bond. Now, the fundamental question we are asking is very simple, Mr. Speaker. If the levy is taken on all Kenyans, why can't the bond also be divided between the national government and the counties, so that counties who are also having serious pending bills, like Bungoma that I've just quoted, that has got about a pending bill of 212 million on the Sangalu Kandui Road, why can't they also get a fair share of that road bond to be able to deal with county governments' stuck roads and pending bills that are related to roads that are maintained by counties? It is on our report, Mr. Speaker. So on RMLF alone, Mr. Speaker, we are urging the House that the report is recommending 13.9 billion that must go to counties, on RMLF, because they deserve it. And we are recommending that we must also make sure that the road bond is shared with counties, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as I finish, I want to echo the thoughts that have been shared by my brother, Senator Boni Alwale. And Mr. Speaker, perhaps before I finish, this is such an important issue that I'm realizing that there are no members in this House, Mr. Speaker, to discuss, and there's only members of the Finance and Budget Committee. So I don't know whether under standing order number 1, Mr. Speaker, perhaps you could rule that we're given more time to give the nation some ideas of what is going on. Because if there are no members in the House, and this is a very important issue, and I only have my 20 minutes, and I can do justice to this particular BPS with another 5 more minutes, Mr. Speaker, it's up to your discretion, Mr. Speaker. But I know you have been a very generous speaker to us in this House. Perhaps you'll consider. But as I said, Mr. Speaker, the issue of budgeting for national functions vis-a-vis county functions, Mr. Speaker, is something that we must confront. Under Schedule 4 of the Constitution, Mr. Speaker, it is very clear, like day, what belongs as a functions of counties and what belongs as a functions of national government. This behavior, this conundrum of national government consistently hiding hiding county functions in the budget-making process and taking it to the national government instead of financing counties, Mr. Speaker, this is why this House was formed. This is why Article 96 of the Constitution exists, Mr. Speaker, to protect the interests of counties, to protect the ideology of devolution. Mr. Speaker, you cannot have 22, in fact, I want to be very precise, Mr. Speaker, that I want to invite this House to 29,774,229,484 shillings. That is money that has been budgeted by the national government on purely county functions. There is no any excuse structurally, ideologically, financially, operationally, politically, in whichever form you take it, Mr. Speaker, even in economic policy, there is no any excuse to have these monies go to national government. Mr. Speaker, we can't allow this. These 29 billion, Mr. Speaker, must go to counties. It must go to counties. And Mr. Speaker, in the spirit of the agreement, the cooperation agreement that President Ruto and Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga signed recently on the idea of entrenching devolution, promoting devolution, empowering devolution, making sure that devolution can work, Mr. Speaker, they said that there's a possibility of concurrence between Parliament and the executive to even give counties 450 billion. We are now giving them a scientific solution to be able to make sure that these monies go to county. And the scientific solution is this, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, I beg for 5 minutes to go through this. The scientific solution is very simple. On vote D133 on State Department for Environment and Climate Change, go and look at that vote on BPS, Mr. Speaker. On the idea of national solid waste management, 40 million that has been given to the national government and that department must go to county. Dear Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga, dear President Ruto, that money must go to county. On vote D1331 on plastic waste management,
give the Honorable Senator further 5 minutes. Yes.
Sure. I can always be informed by the